All right, hello everybody. This is Flea Market Fantasy number 20. This is your co-host, Mike L., and as always, I'm joined by...
Michael Dell of the LCS Hockey Radio Show.
That's right. And who else are we joined by this week?
Mike L., we have the pleasure once again to welcome back our good friend, Cousin Brandon Damashek.
Woo!
Hello.
There he is, Cousin Brandon.
Hi.
Now, Brandon, this is your second appearance on the Flea Market Fantasy. Thank you so much. I didn't want to bug you so soon to come back, but Mike L. is a big fan of yours. He's very excited to get you back on because he wanted you to talk Crisis on Infinite Earths.
Is that what it was called?
the DC mega crossover.
I should tell you, first of all,
yeah,
you don't even have to say it's my second appearance. I don't really remember the first one.
Well, for you, Brandon, and for those who may not remember, you were on when we discussed Secret Wars, the big Marvel crossover. So Mike L. thought, it'll be good to bring you back to talk about the DC big crossover, Crisis on Infinite Earths. See?
It made no sense. No, let me just say again, I do remember being on for the Marvel Secret Wars one. I'm not sure if I mentioned it or if you may have mentioned it. I woke up with a knot on my head the next morning.
You were drinking during the show quite heavily.
Oh, I was loaded.
And you became less and less coherent as the show went on.
Yeah, but I went back and listened
more
to
and more
it.
entertaining.
I may have been asleep by the end of it. I don't know.
Well, yeah, you didn't make the end of the show. You hung up early, and we kept talking. But it was great. The fans loved it. I got a lot of letters from the orphans and the clergy that listen to the show, and they all loved it. So,
well, you know my target audience is, and as long as I can make them happy, then it's worthwhile.
That's all that matters. Now, Brandon, are you drinking this evening?
Of course.
What are you having?
Well, at the moment, I am drinking a National Bohemian, which is a terrible beer, and I've already had a few of these and a whiskey. So yeah, but I'm not nearly in the bag like I was the last time. So,
hey, I'm thinking of for 2020, I'm going to start drinking herbal tea. Does anyone drink herbal tea?
I have.
What kind of booze is in that?
Yeah, it's completely booze free. But I'm thinking to start. I don't know, just something new.
I don't know.
Something new.
I drink two things. I drink booze and coffee. That's pretty much my lifeblood.
I just drink sparkling water. Fancy water.
That's boring. Mike L., I know you don't do that. You get it done.
Yeah.
I should probably drink more, then maybe I could get it done, right?
But do you booze it up, Mike L., up in Canada?
Actually, I had kind of an epiphany on my birthday in June. I invited all my friends over to my house, and I got blind drunk and don't remember the last half of the night. So I kind of just don't ever want to do that again. So I'm trying to take it easy,
Oh, that's good. That's
good.
Well,
it was embarrassing.
I went sober for a year, and although I felt great and better physically, psychologically I felt worse. I'm like, God damn, I want to drink. It was hard. Seriously, it was tough. I hated it.
I can imagine. Yeah.
So,
all right. Well, we'll try to stay as sober as long as you can tonight, Brandon.
I will.
I will. Although, now that you mention it, though, that we're talking this Crisis on Infinite Earths, I could have used a drink when we were reading this. Holy hell.
This is true.
But anyway. Now, Brandon, you said you had some other talking points you wanted to get to.
Well, just a couple of things that come up. One is it's just a very quick story, but it happened tonight, and that's why I wanted to tell you guys.
Oh, okay.
So we got our first real snow of the season here today.
Oh, because you're in Eastern PA. I'm in Western PA.
I'm in Central PA.
Oh, Central?
Yeah. So I'm in the capital city of Pennsylvania, in Harrisburg.
How sad is it that I don't know where Harrisburg is located?
It's very sad because you've not left your house in 44 years, as we've established.
But we didn't get really any snow here, not too much. So yeah.
No, this was like the first one, pretty much. And so the point is, so my house, where it's located, it's situated sort of on the top of a hill, and I have a very long, steep driveway. So I pulled into the driveway like a good husband. I went and I picked my wife up from work because she was nervous about driving home. I picked her up. We got out of the car, and I turned around. I was like, "Fuck! My car's rolling down the hill."
Oh no!
So I had to run to the car and jump in. Yeah, and it was terrible. And it almost rolled out into the street, but fortunately, I got it stopped just in time. This has happened though before, and it rolled into her car.
But you're like Batman. You're running down a speeding car, jumping in and stopping it. Holy hell!
Like Batman, except I did slip in the driveway and fall. But otherwise, I'm just like Batman.
So impressive.
Yeah, so that was pretty good. So that was one tale that I wanted to share with you. Another one, and this is very off topic, but I thought of all people, Mike Dell, and maybe even you, Mike Dell, might appreciate. Yesterday I applied for a creative writing teacher job at a charter high school.
Nice.
Yeah,
it's pretty cool.
I'd be very excited about that.
For those who aren't aware, Brandon has his MFA, and he, of course, he's a poet. 19 books. You can get his book of poetry. Who would you be? And also, he teaches, Mike L. He's a teacher.
Oh, nice. Wow.
So
what do
I
you
teach
teach?
at the collegiate level, but I teach like English composition and all that boring shit. But like, ideally, I'm like, you know what? If I could be a high school creative writing teacher, think of those broads. No, just kidding.
You realize this is being recorded, right?
Oh, I know.
It's okay. We don't have any listeners. Oh, by the way, speaking of fans and listeners, sometimes I tell people to write us at mail@comicbooksyndicate.com.
Yes.
But I told you I have no idea where that mail goes.
Yes.
Well, I finally got it sorted out, okay? And the good news is 0 letters, okay? In 20 weeks, 0, okay? So yeah,
that's awesome. So again, so nobody is listening. So I should say I'm holding my penis. But wait, I really did have one more thing. I'm sorry, and I hate to like rattle all these off, but I'll forget.
No,
I absolutely won't.
Great.
And so here's my last thing, and this is clearly for Mike L. Although Mike Dell, you're going to shock me if you know what I'm talking about. But Mike L, my wife and I have been watching a program of late. And we watched the original. We are now in season 9 of the second series of this. We're watching Degrassi.
I thought you were going to say Doctor Who. Okay,
No.
Degrassi, yeah.
Have you watched Degrassi?
Oh, yeah, I grew up on Degrassi. Degrassi, yeah.
So she watched it as a kid. I had never watched it. I'm like, I don't really know what you're talking about, but okay. I have to say, it is one of the best, worst things I've ever watched. It is dreadful, and I love it.
Exactly.
It's so good. It's Canadian 90210.
Yes, the original.
Only with worse acting and less attractive people.
Yes, in fact, Aaron Spelling wanted to get the rights to Degrassi Junior High, and he couldn't, so he created 90210. Yep, that's a fact.
Wow. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. So what did he do instead?
He did 90210.
Oh, you're kidding.
Nope.
So that was his response to that?
Exactly, yep.
Oh my God. That's fascinating. I'm so glad to hear that.
Yeah, I've never seen any of it. I knew about it when I was a kid. I'd heard about it and stuff, but I'd never watched any of it.
It's fantastic. Like I was watching the other day, and and I think Mike Dell, you know this, but Mike L, you may not. I am a staunch and hardcore fan of Beverly Hills 90210. It's one of my all-time favorite shows because, again, it's terrible, but it's mesmerizing, all the terrible shit. Every episode's like a PSA. You're just like, oh, my God, I hate you, I hate you, I hate you. And so this came along, and I'm like, oh, my God. And this show, too, I should mention, it's 90210. It is fucking dark. I mean, there are school shootings and like gonorrhea outbreaks, date rapes, and I was watching this and I was like, well, all this just happened to Kelly Taylor on 90210. But it is, Drake started on Degrassi. Drake.
Oh, I think I knew that, yeah.
And he gets shot and he spends several seasons in a wheelchair.
Oh, yeah.
It's so funny. Oh,
it's so funny.
It is. It's hysterical. It really is.
You know who else is a big fan is Kevin Smith.
Well, he appears in several episodes.
Yes.
In fact, we just watched a 4-episode arc with Kevin Smith and Jason Mewes, and it was terrible.
I saw those two. They were garbage. Yeah.
Oh, they go to Hollywood, and Mewes is making a movie. He's directing his first film, and it's called Musical High, but it's MEWESICAL. Musical High. And it is ridiculous. And oh, God. And everybody on the show, they're all supposed to be these great friends. They couldn't be more judgmental pricks. Like, all they do is tell each other what a fuck up they are. And I'm like, are you just high school friends? Like, I don't get this.
So
It's an amazing show.
So, like, the
It's so
people
good.
making Degrassi, did they know they're making shit? Like, with a wink and a wink, you know?
No, I have to think that they thought they were making one of those sort of like after school special type shows.
Yeah.
Where every episode, this week we're going to learn about STDs. You know what I mean? Like, that's what it is. But it's hysterical. It is so goddamn funny. And you just hate everyone.
So have you seen Junior High then from the 80s?
You mean with the Zitz Remedy?
Yes, there you go.
So
Zit
it's Joey Jeremiah. It's Wheels, who, by the way, this guy, oh my God. So the one character, Wheels, who's a member of the Zitz Remedy.
I don't know what you're saying. What is Zitz Remedy?
Okay,
what
the Zitz Remedy is a band. It's a 3-piece. They have one song that's like Everybody Wants Something. That's their only song for like 3 seasons, right? And at the end of the final season, Wheels, who's this total loser and he's a member of the band, he blows up his friend's spot. And then he gets drunk at a summer party, goes out with his friend. He gets into an accident. He kills a 2-year-old girl, and his best friend who's in the car with this girl in the car with him, gives her a permanent limp.
Holy hell.
And then he goes to jail. I'm saying this is a dark show. It's insane. And then the other member, Snake, who's one of the bars, he shows up in the next generation of Degrassi, only he gets cancer. And then Joey Jeremiah, what happens to him? Bald. Yeah, that's his big takeaway. Oh, I'm bald. I own a car dealership and I'm bald. Jesus Christ.
That poor son of a bitch.
This show it's fantastic. I can't recommend it enough.
Well, on the LCS show, Larry and I have plowed through all of Twin Peaks, so we're looking for a new show to watch. Maybe we'll try some Degrassi.
Oh, God. The wife and I have been talking about starting a blog. Like, we love it. We love it so much. Or a podcast, something. We've got to just talk Degrassi. And if we do, I know on my first call is going, hey, Michael.
Yeah.
Michael, come talk Degrassi.
I had a massive crush on Caitlin when I was a kid. Have you come across Caitlin?
Yeah, she was in the original series, and then she becomes once again intertwined with Joey Jeremiah in the Next Generation. Here's the funny thing: she got better looking as she got older, but she was, pardon my French, kind of a cunt. Sorry, I didn't love her, and she's a bad actress too, by the way.
I don't think any of them are particularly great, but.
No, but she was really bad. Like, it was really bad. The funny thing is, what I came to like was Spike. Spike, when they brought her back in the Next Generation and she married Snake, she actually looked good. I was like, man.
Was she the one that got pregnant?
Yeah. At 14.
Okay.
At
Right,
14.
right.
What's up with the what's
At
up with
14,
the
Mike Dell, and in the Next Generation, there's a 13-year-old who is a baby.
Holy hell, babies having babies.
Oh, dude, it's insane.
Spike, Snake, Wheels. What the hell is happening?
So it's just all names. Then there's Craig, who plays guitar. Craig, who's clearly a Jew, he turns out to be bipolar. He starts doing coke. Everyone's a mess. It's just a mess of a show. Everyone's got an issue. And the graduating classes every year, it's like 12 people. All this shit is happening to this group of people. What's happening? It doesn't make sense. It's so good. So good. I love it. I absolutely love it.
Well, that's a perfect.
I had to mention it because I knew Michael had to know.
Yeah, that's fine. But that's a perfect segue. The fact that it does make sense. PC Crisis on Infinite Earths, Michael.
Yes.
We talking Crisis
calling
now?
him Spike L. Can I?
Yeah.
There you go. There you go. There you go.
Spike L.
Yeah, we're going to segue into Crisis now. This issue, Michael, you selected issue 3 of Crisis on Infinite Earths from 1985.
Yes, I wanted to pick number 3 to make it even more confusing for you.
Yes.
But of course,
I didn't realize it was the third issue.
Did you read
I thought it was the first one. I had no idea.
They got the number right there on the cover, right?
right on the cover.
I just assumed it was the
Most
first
comics
one.
don't have the number. This one does.
I had no idea. Oh, well.
The reason I picked number 3 is because this is how I read it. I started with number 3, so I wanted to recreate the experience. Okay?
Well, let me ask you this, though, Michael. If you started with this issue, you still wanted to read the rest?
You got to understand. There's a reason it's so popular, and it's still popular today. Unlike, unfortunately, Secret Wars, right?
Well, how dare you? I don't.
Yeah,
I didn't come here to be attacked, Micah.
This is a train wreck. I can't imagine anyone reading this and being like, "Oh, I can't wait to read the next one."
Oh, I was. I hunted these down like a pirate hunting treasure.
Oh my goodness! Yeah, so explain why do they need a miniseries, a 12-issue limited series, Crisis on Infinite Earths? What were they trying to do, Michael?
It's a great question. Here's the simplest answer possible. So DC Comics started in 1935-ish, right? They introduced Superman in 38, then Batman, and the Flash, then Green Lantern, etc. So in the 1950s, most of the superhero comics got canceled. And so DC continued to publish Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman. Marvel continued to publish their non-superhero comics. But then what happened was in the 50s, they brought back the Flash, okay? But instead of bringing back the 1930s and 40s Flash, they introduced a new Flash with a new suit and a new origin. Instead of Jay Garrick, it was Barry Allen. Then DC continued to do that with the rest of their characters, right? But Superman and Batman and Wonder Woman continued. And so now obviously back in those days, they would read comics for a few years, then they grow out of them. So the kids in the 50s and the 60s did not remember any of the 40s characters. So it didn't make a difference, right? If it was a different Flash or a different Green Lantern or whatever. But then someone decided to have fun, and they thought, let's do a story where the new Flash meets the old Flash. But since we've never mentioned the old Flash, we're just going to say that the old Flash was a comic book character, and that Barry Allen travels to another dimension where this comic book character is real, and we're going to call it Earth 2, okay?
Okay, and just to remind everybody, the old Flash was like an older guy with a helmet, like a metal helmet, and a red shirt.
Right. He had a helmet like the god Mercury with little wings on it.
Yes.
And like no mask. Like it looked like he was wearing jeans, basically, you know?
And when you're saying Barry Allen, the new Flash, that's the Flash we all grew up with, like the red outfit, the yellow lightning bolts.
Absolutely.
If I can quickly interject, I like that there was a superhero named Barry Allen.
Yeah.
What a dork. Anyway, sorry.
No problem. So basically, then they did the same thing with Green Lantern. They had the new Green Lantern meet the old one.
And the old Green Lantern was a guy who had a little like domino mask and a cape, and he wore like a red and was it green?
Red and purple and green outfit. Very ugly, mismatched, out of style costume.
Brandon, were you aware of these old versions, Brandon?
I have no idea what the hell you guys are talking about.
So, now here's the funny thing is, just to be clear, Marvel also has old Golden Age versions of their characters like Black Widow, the Vision, the Angel. They just never mentioned them again. I mean, they did eventually, but they didn't, in the 60s. But DC did, okay? So anyway, now this is where it gets confusing. So they would have Barry Allen meet Jay Garrick and the Green Lantern meet Green Lantern. But then when it came time for Superman and Batman and Wonder Woman, they were all the same, right? They all had the same secret identity. So it kind of became confusing because now Barry Allen is going to a world where these comic book characters are real, but in these comic books was Superman, was he also Clark Kent, right? So they just didn't mention that. They just kind of ignored that. So that goes on for a few years. So now we've got an Earth 1 and an Earth 2. Then eventually for fun, they introduced Earth 3, where the Justice League is all evil and they're called the Crime Syndicate, right? Then a few years later, they introduced Earth X, where the Nazis won World War II, and then the superheroes there are still fighting the Nazis. And then later, there's Earth S, where Shazam or Captain Marvel lives, and then on and on and on. So by the time they get to the early 80s, and Marvel, as we know, Marvel's continuity has always been pretty, what's the word I'm looking for? Strict and kind of coherent, right? Like Stan Lee and Roy Thomas, they kept everything pretty straight. So between each book, there was very tight continuity. DC was never like that. So once all the Marvel writers started kind of migrating over to DC, people like Marv Wolfman and Denny O'Neil tried to bring a Marvel-style continuity to DC, and it didn't quite work because there was all these different Earths, right? So Marv Wolfman came up with the idea, well, why don't we just merge all these Earths together and just get rid of multiple Earths and just have one continuity? So that was the springboard for this story.
And also, wasn't it like in Earth 2, there was a Wonder Girl, like a younger version of Wonder Woman? And then she came over into Earth 1, and they're like, well, how can you have a young Wonder Woman and an old Wonder Woman be the same person in the same world, right? Like, wasn't stuff like that going on, too?
That's true, but it's not because of Earth 1 or Earth 2. It's just because there was an editor named Bob Haney that had absolute no respect for continuity. So originally Wonder Girl was the teenage version of Wonder Woman, but then one day they're like, you know what, let's just make her separate. And then the readers were like, well, what the hell is this? Yeah. But things like that would happen all the time.
And like the Huntress, wasn't she like Batman and Catwoman's daughter on Earth 2, but then they brought her into Earth 1? And
well, that was after Crisis, they rebooted her origin and said that she was the daughter of a gangster named something Bertinelli. So
okay,
but
Valerie Bertinelli?
Oh, that'd be awesome. Yeah.
Was it Bertinelli? It was probably it wasn't Bertinelli. It was something else. But you know what?
Schneider banged the mom on One Day at a Time, and they had the Huntress.
No, but the most confusing one of all is Black Canary, where there was a Black Canary in Earth 2, and then they introduced a Black Canary in Earth 1, but they said that it was mother and daughter, but then the daughter migrated to Earth 1, and then the Earth 2 one died, and her spirit went into Earth 1. It was a disaster. So
I'm already very confused.
Yeah, let me ask a quick question, though, here.
Sure.
So, first of all, Michael, you did a great job actually explaining the different Earths. That was really interesting. And, I'm not even being sarcastic. Okay. I really did it. I was like, wow, I had no idea. And secondly, I think it's fascinating that they then tried to combine it into a single sort of universe. I think it's really interesting. But I guess my question is, so while they were making these DC comics, were they making comics? Like, how did you know which Earth you were in? Like,
so, okay, 99% of the DC comics in the 60s and 70s were on Earth 1, okay? But once in a while, what they would do is the Justice League would just travel to Earth 2 and hang out with the Justice Society, right? So what they would do is...
Explain the Justice Society, Michael. Like, they were just an older version of the Justice, like the older Green Lantern, the older Flash, the older, right?
Right, so all the old versions of the heroes from the 40s were the Justice Society, but like things were always a little bit different. So Batman would have a black bat on Earth 2, but on Earth 1 he would have the yellow circle, right? Because the yellow circle was not introduced until 64. So DC kind of just pretended that any stories that happened before that, before 64, was the Earth 2 Batman, even though when you were reading those stories they never mentioned that, right? It was kind of like,
oh, Jesus.
And then, like, the Earth 2 Superman, he was always depicted as older, right? He had, like, gray around the temples and stuff.
So if Superman from Earth 1 would meet Superman from Earth 2, he'd have gray around his temples. His S would be a little bit different. He would be less powerful because he was supposed to be the version of Superman from the 30s and the 40s, right?
See, that's when I was a kid. When I would get DC, I liked Earth 2 better because I like those guys better. I like the older Superman. I like all the older heroes. That's what I read when I was a kid.
Well,
saying though that they could actually run into themselves, though. I mean,
yeah, but they'd have to go to a different Earth. They'd have to travel between dimensions.
And so if they do that, so like you said, and I think you sort of explained this, but maybe I missed it. If I'm Earth 1 Superman and I'm Earth 2 Superman meeting up, are we both Clark Kent or are we not?
Yes. Yes. No, that's where it's confusing. Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, and Green Arrow are all the same. Okay, but Atom, Green Lantern, Flash, and Hawkman are all different. They all have different identities. Yeah.
Let me ask you this: if I'm Superman 1 and I go to Earth 2 and I bang Lois Lane 2, am I cheating on Lois Lane 1?
No one has ever asked that. That's a great question.
Wow, that is a good question.
See, this is why you're an English major, right?
Yes. I think of these things. All right. So I guess that's the basic premise of all these Earths. So Crisis on Infinite Earths was just DC's way to consolidate their universes to make it simpler and to fix continuity. With Secret Wars, we had Marvel selling toys. DC, they're doing this to fix up editorial fuck-ups.
Right. Exactly.
Interesting. Okay.
All right. Fair enough.
Now I understand the premise. I still don't understand the comic.
Yeah, I got some other real quick Crisis info here. Like, Michael, the writer of this issue is Marv Wolfman, and the artist is George Perez. Well, Marv Wolfman, he originally had the idea in 1981 to try and consolidate all this when he was working on the Green Lantern, and some fan wrote in a question about continuity. He's like, yeah, this is a mess. We really need to fix this. And actually, when he first went to DC in 1968, he pitched the idea of all the heroes coming together to fight one evil villain called the Librarian.
Okay.
And the DC editors and stuff, they said, well, limited series don't sell, so we're not going to do it. But here, all these years later, it comes back, and he's the guy that pushes through to get Crisis on. And in 1982, DC hired a researcher to read every comic they ever published to prepare for the story.
Oh my God!
Right, Peter Sanderson.
What was his name? Peter
Sanderson. I've got him on Facebook.
Can you imagine reading every book? Because they bring up all these old obscure characters from like the 40s and 50s, and they're all in this issue, and it's like you got to know what's going on. So that's crazy. But what a gig.
Did you wait? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I take one quick step back. Did you say the librarian was a character or was an actual person?
It was a pitched character. Like they wanted to have it like one. It was just a 1968 idea by a young Marv Wolfman. It never went anywhere. But don't worry about it.
But the librarian
that a nerd was going to rule them all. I'm like, good.
Wait, Mike L., you mean the librarian was a thing?
The librarian is the Monitor. He just changed his name.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Oh, the Monitor was in the... okay. All right.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So leading up to the limited series, like this wasn't just something they threw together haphazardly. DC did a lot of planning on this, and they were working on it for many years. And 17 titles ran crossover issues leading up to the series.
Holy hell.
And they tried to make sure that the Monitor guy appeared in all these issues to kind of plant the seeds for what was coming. And Crisis became a bestseller and a crucial turning point for DC. It raised sales by 22% in the first year.
Jeez.
Man of Steel #1 was the highest selling comic in 1986 because that spun out of this. Mm-hmm. And DC actually beat Marvel in direct sales for 2 months in 1987, which was crazy. It never happened for many years.
And correct me if I'm... So wait, and this comic that we read was, I think, 85, right? So
correct.
So, and Secret Wars, was that 84? Was that right? It was right around the same time, wasn't it?
Yes.
Right,
so
I'm just trying to think. Which
same time. I think Secret Wars might have started first.
Yes.
I think.
Yeah. Secret Wars
that's what
started
I thought. I was like,
84, right. I believe. But yeah, it was a little earlier. But yeah, it's not like this was a response to Secret Wars. They had been planning this. Yeah,
that's why I was asking.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. But the work they had to put in just to get this all sorted is crazy because it's very intricate and everything. Wow. But all right, Mike L., so let's get to the issue. Explain where we're at when this thing opens, because Brandon and I were both lost.
Okay, so I have to give a quick preface. Before I read this issue, I did read #1 and 2. I'm not sure if you guys did. No?
Hell no.
Okay. No. So I reread 1 and 2. I also reread I read for the first time all the crossovers. Okay, like all the ones leading up to #3. I read them all. Okay, so yeah, and I could just say that I wish we would have started with #1 because this was confusing as hell. I mean, I've read it a million times, but to jump in, I can imagine. But okay, to make a long story short, we've got the Monitor who knows a lot, who's very powerful.
Yeah, explain though. In a way, he's kind of like the Marvel's The Watcher, except he's getting involved in things where the Watcher never gets involved.
So the Monitor, he's seen, but this is I'm kind of giving all this with a grain of salt because whereas he seems to know a lot, you'll see as the story goes, if you continue to read, that he doesn't. And I can tell you, despite all the pre-planning DC did, Marv Wolfman made a lot of this up as he went along. Okay. Okay. So I can just say that Andy Monitor seems to have this master plan. He's preparing for this coming threat of this crisis. So he seems to know what's going on. In this story, pardon me, we've got his assistant, Harbinger / what's her real name? Is it Lila?
Yeah, let's go with that.
Okay, I think so. Anyway.
I don't know.
I can't remember. It'll come up
that
later.
That girl.
Yeah. And so she's kind of going out and doing missions for him in the previous issues. And so this character on the splash page this is where it gets cool. This is Alexander, or wait, is it Alexander or Alex Luthor? So on Earth 3, all the Justice League are evil, and so the only superhero is Lex Luthor, okay?
Oh,
so on that planet, Lex Luthor and Lois Lane have a baby, and this is the baby. And in Crisis #1, just like Superman's origin, they take their planet is getting destroyed by this white antimatter wave, and they take their baby and they put it on a rocket ship and send it to Earth 1, okay? So
I've heard that one before.
But yeah, we should mention the big crisis is that there is this big white antimatter wave wiping out the universes, going through.
Yeah, I should probably explain that. So in the previous issues, this white cloud of antimatter has been destroying each universe. So as we're going through the story, you'll see characters on Earth 3 trying to fight the wave, then they'll die. Then you'll see Earth, a different Earth. Everyone will get killed. The other really confusing thing about this story is that the antimatter wave is also approaching in the past, in the 1940s.
Yes.
45,000 years ago and 33,000 years in the future. So it defies logic, but you just have to kind of go with it and accept that it's destroying the multiverse at the same time.
Yeah, it was very confusing. But
yeah. Right. So in this issue, and the other thing too is that the Harbinger, which is supposed to be Monitor's, assistant, she has been possessed by one of the shadow demons. Yes. Which is the Anti-Monitor's army of like things that go out and do things for him.
The big bad here is a guy named Anti-Monitor.
Right.
Who's the shadow self of the Monitor, I guess. And his minions are a bunch of shadow demons. And they're trying to destroy the universe while the Monitor is trying to save the universe.
Okay, I didn't get any of this, but I was going to say it'd be great if Mike L was like, also, men are women and women are dogs. now we can keep moving. Because I'm like, I'm so confused. Go ahead.
So basically, so Monitor is talking to this baby that's grown into a tween in the space of a few weeks. The tween can talk, so he's trying to figure out what's going on. Meanwhile, Harbinger is kind of contemplating whether or not the Monitor has figured out that she's turned evil yet, and she's intending to kill him, but she doesn't know. So then she leaves the Anti-Monitor's satellite headquarters and flies over to talk to the Anti-Monitor, right? Yes. And so now we see the shadowy figure of the Anti-Monitor kind of watch everything from like his ship or whatever this is. And the Anti-Monitor also has like an assistant or whatever you want to call him, a henchman. And this is one of my favorite characters. This is the Psycho Pirate, okay?
Psycho Pirate.
Yes, by the way, one of the worst named characters I'd ever heard.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
Oh, I hated him so much. It was like a bad Ming the Merciless.
You know what's funny though? I believe his name was taken from literature, isn't it? Or am I wrong about that?
Psycho Pirate?
Was taken from
literature?
I think so. It's a character from a novel.
Was Milton.
Yeah, I don't know. I've never encountered a Psycho Pirate.
I will do some.
Mike L, you're thinking of a Red Hot Chili Peppers tour.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, maybe you're right. Maybe it's not taken from literature, but I'm too mistaken on that.
Oh, wait, anyway. I forgot. Yeah, Dostoevsky, he did write Psycho Pirate in 1856. I forgot about that.
So I have to explain Psycho Pirate's power. This is so cool. So he has this mask called the Medusa mask that covers his face so you can't see it. But when he takes it off, when he looks at you, he can control your emotions by just changing the expression on his face. So if he's happy and he smiles, he makes you happy. If he has fear and he makes like a scared face, he makes you scared. So that's his power. Wow. So anyway,
it's a lot like Larry. Or Buddy Larry. It's the same thing.
Oh, is that
wait. So again, and Michael, bear with me because again, I've not read DC. I don't know this stuff.
Okay.
Is this Psycho Pirate character, has he been in other comics or was he strictly part of this?
He was definitely in other comics. But this is sort of what made him, more famous. But apparently he's been around since the 40s. He was just not a big character,
Okay. But since you bring that up, Brandon, we should mention that Monitor and Anti-Monitor were created strictly for this, right?
That's right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Man, I don't know. I know nothing about DC except for Batman and maybe some Superman. That's it.
Yeah.
Hey, when I first read this as a kid, I also didn't know anything about DC except for Batman and Superman. So this was all new to me. Okay. So then we cut over to Earth 1 in the future. And this is now the Flash is living in the future. And again, as the reader, you don't really know what's going on, but it has a little note. It says, see Flash number 350. So that will explain why he's living in the future. But who cares, right? That's where he is. So even though he's in the future, they're also experiencing the crisis. And so there's all this crazy weather going on, and the Flash is trying to deal with it, right? And then he sees the Anti-Monitor wave coming. And then this is where it gets really cool, because then he vibrates out of the scene and disappears, and we don't know where he went. But if you go back to Crisis number 1, Barry Allen the Flash has been appearing sporadically to people. He appeared to Batman once, and I think he appeared somewhere else. So, you don't quite know exactly what's going on yet, but it seems to all tie together. So, but we'll find out as we go along, right? Okay,
sure.
So we cut back to July 1985, Earth 1, and we have the Teen Titans dealing with the crisis as well, the antimatter wave, right? So now the antimatter wave is destroying New York City. And so we have Nightwing and Katana and Jericho and all the Teen Titans helping people, trying to escape this disaster. Then they meet up with Superman and Batman, and they're all trying to figure out what's going on, and Superman admits he has no idea what's going on, right? Then we get a really cool scene where Batman has another vision of the Flash. So now as the reader, we're thinking, well, is this what Flash did? Did he travel back in time from the future to the past? We don't know. But guess what? We'll find out in number 8. You guys haven't read it yet, but I have. I'm not going to tell you what happens. But anyway.
Wait, I'm going to stop you again.
Yeah, go ahead.
And it's only because I don't have the comic in front of me. I swear to God, I recall in reading it that like Superman had like a one-liner. And in my mind, Superman should not have one-liner.
I don't remember if he did or not.
He said something to me that was very like...
You mean like a pun?
Yeah, like a little joke.
He said something in my mind when I read it where I'm like, really? That like Superman makes jokes? I was like, come on, not Superman.
Yeah, that might have been later. That might have been Superman of Earth 2, I think.
Either way, that pissed me off. So anyway, I cut you off. I didn't like it.
So
Superman does not make jokes. He's a stoic figure.
I don't know about that. I don't know. I think in the 1950s TV show, he was making jokes all the time.
Well, he, like me, had his penis out, and I don't like it. I'm like, Superman, come on.
Scamp.
Enough.
All right, so back to the story. Okay, so Flash is trying to warn them. He's like, I tried warning you, help, help. So he disappears. No one knows what's going on, right? So then we cut over to, another cool scene. So this is now Brainiac, okay? So this is Brainiac, the newer version of Brainiac that was introduced only a year earlier. Now, I don't know if you guys know Brainiac, but usually Brainiac has green skin with yellow hair, okay? I don't know if you know that, okay? But in 1984 he was redesigned to look kind of like a
robot.
Yeah, like a robot skeleton with a huge head, and he's got this cool spaceship that he flies around that looks like his head with tentacles. It's just awesome.
Well, what I'm learning here, not only Brandon, are we learning a lot about DC and their continuity, I'm also learning that Mike L has a very low bar for cool.
Oh, this is just...
Well, I'm looking up Brainiac right now.
Knock my socks off.
It looks like.
This is all good stuff.
I seem to remember Brainiac as being bald.
Yes, yes. Green skin, bald with... when I said yellow hair, his eyebrows were yellow.
Oh, okay.
And his pubic hair. But anyway.
I'm checking on that now, and it's checked out.
So anyway, so then Brainiac says he's got to go, he knows who can help him, so he takes off, but we don't know who he's going to yet, right?
He says Lex Luthor.
Oh, does he? Shit,
yeah.
Okay. He does say Lex Luthor. No mystery there. Okay, there you go.
I'm pretty sure he does.
Yeah, he does, at the bottom of the page. Only the one who calls himself Luthor can help me now,
yes.
So he's got to go get Lex Luthor. All right. So then, this is where it heats up, okay? So now it cuts back to the middle of World War II, okay? And in World War II, we're introduced to all these other DC characters from all the war comics, but they are in the middle of dealing with this other threat. So these are, I believe, I'm not sure if they're named, but I think they're called like giant tuning forks at some point.
Yeah, the Monitor went around placing all these giant structures on different planets and different times because this is his plan to stop the antimatter wave.
Oh my God, I had no idea that's what was happening. Okay, good.
Yeah,
glad you addressed this.
And then
I didn't know what those were. I was like, that's like the Beyonder shit. Okay.
And then the Monitor and Harbinger, they distribute different like task forces to protect these structures from the anti-Monitors' shadow demons.
Jesus Christ. Okay, got it.
So this thing appears in the middle of this is a French village, I believe, right in the middle of World War II.
Something like that. Yeah.
And so we're introduced to all these different and these are, I believe, at least 3 separate DC, comic book casts all thrown together. So one of them is the Losers, one of them is the Haunted Tank, and one of them is Sergeant, what's his name?
Sergeant Rock.
Sergeant Rock and the Easy Company.
And we should mention the Losers is another World War II group of people, soldiers.
Right.
And what was that other one you mentioned, Michael? The
Haunted Tank.
I have no idea what that is.
What about the Bastards?
What's the Bastards? No, and just for the record, the Losers were rebooted by Vertigo, and they were adapted into a movie in 2009, I believe.
Really?
Yes, starring Chris Evans.
Called The Losers?
Yes, called The Losers.
It starred Captain America?
Yes,
I was going to
Chris
say,
Evans.
how many comic book shits is he going to do?
Human
Exactly.
Torch, Captain America, The Losers? Holy hell.
Because I'll be honest, that's kind of cool. I could see The Losers. I was like, oh, okay, this could be some cool characters here. I kind of liked it.
Oh, all right.
Yeah,
Fair enough.
they were around, I think, since the 40s or whatever. So yeah. Anyway,
Oddly enough, a little Losers trivia here for you. Even though, spoiler alert, they die here.
yeah.
2 months later, they had a Losers special issue where that was actually their final appearance.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
Really?
Yes.
Huh. Man.
Yes.
So, and I'm sure, Mike Dell, after we're done this, I mean, is it okay for me to spoil it for the listeners about what happens at the end of Crisis?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll explain why they had to do a loser special, but first we'll continue with this issue. Okay, so basically, all these World War II heroes are being assisted by some modern day 1985 heroes, Geoforce, a villain named Dr. Polaris, and Blue Beetle, and I believe that's it. And so they're kind of helping them fight off. Well, what ends up happening is, it's funny. I'm looking at this. I've read it 1,000 times. I have no idea what's happening. So there's this, this tuning fork thing, and then
basically, Michael, what's going on is Sergeant Rock and his soldiers and stuff. They're fighting the Nazis. And the Nazis see this big structure, and they're like, "Oh, this is an American weapon. We need to figure out what's going on here." And so they're fighting the Nazis in the middle of all this, and the shadow demons are trying to fight the superheroes who are trying to protect. So everything's getting confused, and everyone's fighting together and stuff. And yeah, so there you go.
You know what else is getting confused? The readers. Seriously, I was looking at this. I'm like, what the fuck is happening here? I'm like, it was such a mess. Anyway, sorry.
So
My 2 cents.
So they're all fighting left and right, fisticuffs. And meanwhile, the different heroes are all fighting. And then as this is happening, they're fighting the shadow demons, but the antimatter cloud is still coming.
Yes.
And so, unfortunately, all the losers get killed. Gunner, Sarge, Johnny Cloud, and Captain Storm. They all die, okay? The shadow demons...
A real quick point I wanted to make here, Michael. Also, in this scene that we're talking about, Sergeant Rock and his Easy Company, they're fighting everybody. And one of the members of the Easy Company is referred to as Flower.
That's right.
Script, and that is not his name.
That's not his name.
That was a mistake. Because when I was reading this, I was like, what's going on? Because he's trying to save a flower girl, and then everyone's calling this guy Flower. I just thought, why did they do this? It's so confusing. But actually, his real name is Farmer Boy. And they screwed up, and they called him Flower by mistake.
In this story?
Yes.
Really? Interesting. I didn't know that. Okay.
Wow. Okay. So I was reading it, and again, I read it once, read it a couple days ago. It's bizarre. I was like, what is this flower shit? And now I'm more confused because I didn't understand it while I read it. And now, so can you explain that again real quick?
Yeah, all right. So in this scene, a villain, a Nazi guy, is holding a flower girl, and he's going to kill her. Right. And then this other guy from Sergeant Rock's Easy Company sneaks us behind him and shoots him. But they're calling him Flower, and he even picks up a flower and makes and puts it in his helmet and stuff, and it's talking about flowers. But his name is not Flower. The character's name is Farmer Boy. Yet they incorrectly
what the hell?
They incorrectly identified him as Flower in this issue.
Interesting.
Very interesting. Because I remember reading that thinking, I have no idea. This doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it was very weird. Yeah. All right. So anyway.
So basically, after the losers get killed, they continue to fight these shadow demons. You know, Blue Beetle gets burned by one, and blah blah blah. And then
Blue Beetle, it looks like he's going to die, but Monitor transports him away. So
that's what I was just about to say. Yeah. So now this is where, again, we have to just accept the comic book logic. So Monitor is watching all this on a camera from 1985. Yep. He sees that Blue Beetle. He basically says, despite his lack of powers, I was hoping the Blue Beetle's scarab could aid in my mission here. Unfortunately, this was not the case.
Well,
his
here's the thing.
is no longer required.
The scarab was destroying the demons, but in order to destroy them, they had to touch them. And when they touched him, he burned and he got injured. So he was trying not to get touched by him. Yeah, that's the only way he could kill him.
He made a comment. He was like, well, small price to pay it again.
Yeah. So if he would have just let them touch him and took the pain and been a man about it.
Blue Beetle was a pussy. I thought he was a weirdo. I did not understand him at all. I didn't like Blue Beetle at all. But anyway.
I love Blue Beetle.
I love the old Blue Beetle radio shows from like the 1930s. Those are great.
You listen to those live?
Yeah, you can listen to them on. You can get them on the internet.
No, I'm saying you did listen to those live.
Oh,
How old are you, Mike Dell?
Well, not live. I've listened to him in recent years.
Mike Dell.
Yeah.
Are you serious?
Yeah, he's a police officer who became like a superhero at night, the Blue Beetle. And,
See,
that's awesome.
you know what's funny? I thought I knew a lot about Blue Beetle, but I did not know until only a few years ago that in his original incarnation, he was like a Green Hornet knockoff, right?
In a way, yeah. He's a police officer during the day, and then at night he was the Blue Beetle.
Yeah, and then later he got like a superhero suit, and then later in the 60s, this is the second Blue Beetle. This is Ted Kord. The original was Dan Garrett.
Yeah, that sounds right. Yep.
Yeah. So
Let
yeah,
me just
so
say real quick, this is fascinating because I didn't know the Blue Beetle was a character until I just saw him in this comic book.
Yeah,
try
to track down his radio shows on YouTube or whatever. You'll love him.
No, I'll check out his Spotify podcast. I'm sure he's great. Blue Beetle, you said, right? It's not John Paul George. It's what? Okay.
Yeah, it's different Beetle.
All right.
I gotta give you a 45-second side story, okay?
Please.
So Blue Beetle, The Question, Captain Atom, and some other characters were published by Charlton Comics, okay?
Yes.
DC buys those characters, and in this story, they say that those characters exist on Earth 5, okay?
Okay.
Then, in 1985-86, Alan Moore pitches a story where he takes all the Charlton characters, and he basically pitches a murder mystery where blah, 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 we don't know who killed the one superhero. By the end of the story, all the characters are all fucked. They can't ever use them again. So DC says, instead of using the Charlton heroes, why don't you just change the name of all the characters and make up your own? So he created the Watchmen, and that's how you get the Watchmen.
What?
Yeah.
Yep.
Right?
Yes. And Blue Beetle is Night Owl. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that Blue Beetle was Night Owl.
And Captain Atom is Dr. Manhattan, and on and on.
Oh my God.
Oh, that's pretty
fascinating.
cool. Yeah.
I do like Watchmen, so okay.
Who would have been Silk Spectre? Who was the equivalent to Silk Spectre?
That was Nightshade.
Okay. Huh.
Yep.
Interesting.
And the question is Rorschach.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. And
sense.
Son of Vulcan is
Ozzy. That's the man. Now I'm interested.
Yeah.
Well, I love the watch. I mean, the graphic novel is great, and the show's. Well, we can talk about the show later, but the show is great. Anyway, fine. Never mind.
So anyway, okay. So now back to the story. So then we cut. This is okay. So now we cut to the Great Disaster. The Great Disaster is, I believe, maybe 500 years in the future or something, and this is where all of civilization has been destroyed. But it's kind of like a Planet of the Apes world where animals are intelligent, but there's still one human boy left named Commandy, okay?
Okay.
And they're hanging out with him, but who's there but Superman from Earth 2, the old Superman, as well as Dawnstar, who's from the Legion of Superheroes, and she is from the year 3000. And so we've got this mix of heroes that were all gathered together by the Monitor and sent to this time to protect this giant tuning fork tower thing, right?
Yeah. Yep. Oh, there's also a giant monkey, Michael. A big monkey.
King Solomon. No, sorry, Sullivar.
Sullivar, yep.
Yeah. Who, I believe he dies here. Yeah, he dies.
He looks like he dies, but he technically doesn't die. He survives.
Okay.
He becomes one of the Lantern Corps later on, I read.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. So anyway.
So then we cut back to 1879, Texas.
Yes.
And we have, we cut into the middle of a scene with a character named Batlash. And in this sequence, we are introduced to all of DC's cowboy and cowboy superheroes from the Old West. So we've got, who do we got here? We got Jonah Hex, we got Batlash, Johnny Thunder, and Nighthawk. And they are all hanging out at the tuning fork that's been put into this time period. Isn't it convenient that it's all periods where there's all superheroes? Kind of.
Yes.
Anyway.
Yeah.
So then as they're sitting here talking about it, trying to figure out what's going on, some superheroes that were sent by the Monitor come and kind of confront them. So we've got Cyborg, we've got Simon, who's a villain, we've got Green Lantern John Stewart, and we've got Firebrand from the All-Star Squad.
Did you say John Stewart?
Yeah, his name's John Stewart. Wow, that's
John
weird.
Stewart. All right.
Also, Firebrand, I need to mention this lady. She has the worst costume in the history of comic books.
It's not great. It's not great.
It's like the top. It's so weird. Like she's wearing this. It looks like a superhero outfit from like the top of the bosoms down, and then from that up, it's like just a collared blouse.
You know what's funny is I think because she's Firebrand 2, I think her costume is a variation on her father's costume, Firebrand 1. Yeah. Firebrand 1 is a man who wore red pants and a see-through pink blouse.
Wait,
so
nice.
if you think this costume's funny, check out his. Yeah, exactly.
So wait, two things real quick. Mike Dell, how did you make it past the bosoms? And Mike L, my question, like, you're really rattling off. Okay, and again, this is my ignorance, but you're like, okay, well, this is Superman 3, and that's this star or whatever 2. How do you know this? Like, how do you know what is?
A lifetime of dedicated study.
Yeah.
Is that true?
I'll have you know.
Is that how you knew?
Well, yes.
How could an ignoramus like me read this comic and be expected to have any fucking idea what I'm reading?
Well, I mean, obviously it helps to do research, but even when I read this when I was 10 years old, I still read it and, enjoyed it. I don't know.
I get it. And I'm not making fun. I'm just saying though, like, I am so amazed that you would know all that. Like, I'm reading this like, what are you talking about? Multiple Earths? How would I know this?
Okay.
How would I know any of this?
Do you know what Who's Who is?
No.
Who's Who is Who's Who is the guide to every DC superhero. In Marvel,
that's why I don't know.
Yeah. Marvel has the Marvel Universe and DC has Who's Who, okay?
Right. Okay.
Well, let me just tell you, okay? Well, everyone else was in grade 9 and grade 10 when they were out getting it done. I was at home reading every entry in Who's Who, okay?
Yeah, but you know what, Mike? You're getting it done now, and that's more important.
No, actually, I'm back to reading Who's Who again and doing a podcast about it, okay?
It's the circle of life.
Exactly. There you go. So,
it's all right. I'm still reading my Twilight Zone companion books now, so that's fine. Yeah, it's fine.
All right. I think this has been the longest plot summary of any episode we've done.
It's confusing.
Okay. We're not even done.
Yeah,
that antimatter wave wipes out all those cowboys. It just takes a while. Boom.
Right. So they're all dead. So then we cut to the 30th century, which is where the Legion of Superheroes live, which me and Mike Dell have talked about before.
Yeah, the worst team ever.
Oh, the best. Anyway, so then one of their guys, Kid Psycho, gets killed by the antimatter wave.
Is he any relation to Psycho Pirate?
No relation, unfortunately. I looked into it. They're not related.
Kid Psycho Pirate. I love it.
Okay, so Kid Psycho gets killed, and then we cut back to 1985, and we see a glimpse of, ancient Atlantis, the Old West, the 30th century. So this is the Monitor watching everything on his monitors because he can see everything. But despite that fact, he had no idea that his assistant, Harbinger, was plotting to kill him. And so that is the cliffhanger that this issue ends on. Harbinger is about to kill the Monitor. And there we go. The end of the issue.
Can't happen a moment too soon. All I got to say is I was really rooting for that antimatter wave. I was really cheering it on.
I'd laugh if I understood it. I don't know what you're saying, Mike. I'm still so confused.
I wanted all those cowboys and soldiers to die.
At
the motor.
Okay, yes.
Yeah.
Sure.
Collapse these universes and quick. Get it over.
So here's my ignoramus question again. So the Harbinger at the end, who is going to kill the Monitor, she was the same one at the beginning.
Yes.
Who he didn't know was secretly plotting against him.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, she's possessed and whatnot. So, yeah.
Jesus Christ. What a fucking, dude, this was a soup sandwich. To pick this, issue 3 of this, what the fuck are you thinking?
Well, it's funny because despite my confusion, my shared confusion with both of you, I read this story so many times, I absolutely love it. I've also given it to G.I. Jolie. I've given it to another friend of mine in the States. To me, despite the fact that the DC multiverse gets destroyed in this issue, I actually think it's a really good introduction to Bronze Age DC because you basically you get to meet everybody, right? So that's why I think it's so cool.
How many issues was this series?
12.
Oh, so also
Secret Wars. Yep.
Right.
Yeah, interesting. Okay. And so now, as a result of of this limited series, there's only one DC universe?
Not so fast, my friend.
Oh, good.
Should we get to that now, Mike Dell?
Yeah, tell him what happens, Mike.
So, to make a long story short, a bunch of other stuff happens. A bunch of other heroes die, including Supergirl and the Flash. And then in number 10, they go back in time to try and save what's remaining of the multiverse, but they end up sort of failing, and the multiverse gets recreated as the universe, and so now there's only one Earth. And so to summarize what happens, basically there's one DC continuity left, but it's basically an amalgamation of Earth 1 and Earth 2. So now you have the Justice Society, which started in the 1940s, and then you have the modern day heroes, which started in the, quote, present day, whenever that is, right? Whether it's 1985 or whatever year you're reading the comics.
Uh-huh.
That goes on for about 2011, I think. Goes up to about 2011. But in that time period from 86 to 2011, there's all kinds of anomalies. So they restarted Superman from scratch and Wonder Woman from scratch, but they didn't restart Batman. So it kind of creates these anomalies. And so then DC has new problems with their continuity, and they keep trying to fix them over the years until finally in 2011 they gave up and just restarted everything completely from scratch again, and they called it the new 52.
Oh, okay, right. So that I've heard of. Okay.
Yes.
But now we're back to having multiverses, right?
Yes. Because all along, even though DC tried to get rid of the multiverse, certain writers would sneak in and try to bring them back, right? So they would just sneak in other dimensions, and they would figure out ways around it to introduce other multiverses. And also they tried to sneak in ways to bring back these characters, because one of the things they do is, even though Supergirl gets killed in the story, and it's a great story, after number 10 of Crisis, they say she never existed anyway. Because in the new continuity, there never was a Supergirl. There never was two Supermans. There never was two Batmans, right? So they kill all these heroes and they rewrite it anyway, so it never happened. So it kind of nullifies the climax of the story.
So let me ask you a question, because I'm going to try to apply this to the Marvel universe for a second. So if we're talking about multiverses and saying like a continuity issues, I used to collect Marvel, and I would read and collect Amazing Spider-Man and Spectacular Spider-Man and Web of Spider-Man. So they all appear to be happening in the same universe, but they don't always happen to appear to be happening at the same time, which in a sense does create sort of multiple timelines. So how is that any different? You know what I'm saying? What's the difference, I guess?
Okay, for one, Superman on Earth 1, if you're reading Superman comics in, let's just say 1980, okay, the Superman you're reading is only about 25, maybe 30 years old. He's only been a superhero for a, quote, few years, right? But the Superman from Earth 2 is tied to World War II, as an event. So when they go to Earth 2 and visit Superman of Earth 2, he's been around for 50 years as Superman, so he's an old man. Right?
Okay.
That's the difference. And so, but it's also their way of explaining why there's two Flashes, two Green Lanterns, two Atoms. So the old versions of the Atom, the Flash, Green Lantern are on a different Earth, a completely different Earth. So if Barry Allen today goes to visit the Flash right now, the Flash is an old man with gray hair and wrinkles. And Barry Allen is a young man because he's only been the Flash for a few years. Because most superhero comics are timeless, right? Like Spider-Man's usually young, the X-Men are they stay young. Right. But in Earth 2, it's in real time. So in Earth 2, they always started their careers in 1938.
So in other words, it was just a way to tell multiple stories about the same characters, but just from different perspectives in their timeline. That's
kind of it was more a way to explain two things: why there was a different Flash, a different Green Lantern in the 40s, and also it was a way to explain continuity errors. Like, for example, Superman in the 1940s, he did not work at the Daily Planet, he worked at the Daily Star. And his boss's name was not Perry White, it was George Taylor, right? So basically, they took all these little inconsistencies and just pretended that they were all on a different Earth. Even though if you're reading Superman in the 1930s, it was just Superman, right?
Right.
But if you're reading Superman in the 1960s, the Superman from the 30s didn't quite match up. So they just pretended it was on a different Earth, you know?
Yeah, with all those Spider-Man, like Web of Spider-Man, all that stuff, they're all the same character, and they're all overseen by the same editor. That was the big difference between Marvel and DC. Marvel always had like one editorial view, and they made sure everything synced up. So, like his boss was J. Jonah Jameson in all stories, you know? And
right.
Gotcha.
Where DC they didn't have really that one central editor. They had like maybe 6 or 7 editors handling stuff, and so everyone just did their own little things, and things got screwed up.
So that makes a lot of sense. So like you said then, Michael, so then why go back to the multiverse in DC? Like, what's the advantage of doing that again?
Because it just got all fucked up again, right?
So I think what happened was because like Mike Dell is a fan of the All-Star Squadron, right? Mike Dell?
Yes.
Yeah. So for example, when they did the New 52, they wiped out the All-Star Squadron. They wiped out the Justice Society. Yes, completely. And so there's always people that want to bring those characters back, right? So there's always going to be writers like Mark Waid and Grant Morrison. Yeah. They're going to find a way to sneak those characters back in. So over the years, Mark Waid did a story called The Kingdom, and then Grant Morrison did a story called Final Crisis, and they would just figure out ways to say, you know what, if we want to read stories about the Earth 2 Superman, here's how we can do it. And they would just figure out new ways to bring them back, right? Because people miss those characters. So that's pretty much why they keep redoing it.
Jesus. Yeah. I mean, this is like fascinating, but also highly confusing. And granted, I should point out again, I have been drinking, so maybe that's but it really is. It's you know, a little hard to get my head around completely. It is difficult.
you know what's funny is in a lot of people's opinions, it was actually more confusing after Crisis, because what they ended up doing was saying for between 1986 and 2011, what they did was they said, okay, so all those old Justice Society stories did happen, but since there's only one Superman and one Batman and one Wonder Woman, that means they were not there in those stories. So then they have to go and say, okay, well, now we have to rewrite those stories, but with different characters. And so whenever they'd flash back to those stories, they would just fill in these new characters that would fill their spots, right? And then they said, oh, and by the way, Wonder Woman started her career today in the present day, so she could not have been a founding member of the Justice League.
But how did they do that at all? Because like again, I've not collected comic books in years, but one of my distinct memories is like I'd read, say, like an X-Men, and you pointed this out in your recap of this comic. It's like, see Daredevil 350. They always had those little asterisks with like, see X-Men like 27. So like you could always call back to stuff. How do you then not be able to call back?
You can't.
That doesn't make any sense.
That's what's hilarious about if you were to read a DC comic after 1986, then none of the Superman stories before 1986 ever happened.
Well, that's insane.
It is insane. Yeah, they started from scratch. They did the same thing with Wonder Woman, and then later with Hawkman, later with the Legion. But the confusing thing is Batman, they didn't do that. So the Batman stories, for the most part, they could refer back. So now you've got two concurrent things going on. It was a total mess. So then they restarted again in 2011, and now they've undone that again. So whatever.
Well, and this is why I guess I was always a Marvel fan.
Yes.
That's one advantage Marvel has. I mean, it's the same thing with the movies, right? Like Marvel's movies, starting from Iron Man, they're all consistent, and DC's are a complete mess, right?
Yep, that is true. Yeah.
Well, when you say what even are DC's movies? I mean, I will say this: I saw Wonder Woman, and I very much enjoyed it. But you know what? Like outside of that, I don't give a good goddamn. I love the Christopher Nolan Batman movies. I love the Michael Keaton Batman movies. But do they have anything to actually do with the DC universe? I mean, how do you?
Well. No, like the Ben Affleck Batman, that's the DC universe.
Oh, I haven't seen that.
Yeah, they're garbage. Don't worry about it.
Jason Momoa. What a jackass. Jesus Christ. My God.
All right, well, we are running very long here, so we won't get into Marv Wolfman's background and all that stuff. We'll talk about him at a later date. But what'd you think of the writing here in general, Brandon?
The writing? Again, it's hard to be like, yeah, it was fine, seeing as I couldn't follow what the hell was happening. Part of it, but to be fair, part of it, like, again, I didn't realize it was issue 3. I just had no context for what I was reading. I just didn't understand it.
It's
So
all
I
it's all
guess
very
it was
confusing.
okay, but it was like they did that same shit they did in Secret Wars, where it's like, "Thanks, I'm Thor." Oh, great! Like there was a couple scenes of that where everybody had to self-identify, and that was bullshit. I'm like, yeah, right.
But it wasn't as bad as it was in Secret Wars. Like I would
Probably
say
not, because this was more into some sort of story. I just couldn't follow the story. I didn't know what was happening.
yeah, this is all very convoluted and confusing.
Right.
But what they're trying to do, the scope of the project they're trying to do, it's a Herculean effort to try and get all these characters in here and to tell it in 25 pages. And so I understand the complexity of what they're trying to do. I think the dialogue was better than Jim Shooter dialogue, but I think
no, I agree. I thought
Yeah.
I thought this actually read more realistic. It read better in terms of like, yes, the dialogue was definitely better. I just didn't understand what I was reading.
yeah, I think the Secret Wars was better plotted and structured because it's a simpler story. It's just good guys, bad guys, and then Doom going off trying to figure out the beyond.
Yes.
That's all you need to know. This is just all over the place, so it's really hard. But I mean, he did what he could, you know.
I just didn't know.
Michael, I know you loved it, right? So we don't have to.
Well, I could just say that I agree with everything you said. The dialogue is definitely better than Jim Shooter's and Secret Wars, but there are a few moments that are rough as far as dialogue. But overall, it's pretty standard for the day. You know, it's pretty solid, I think. You know.
Yeah. There's nothing like, oh, this is terrible or anything. It's just fine.
Great.
Can we agree that the three of us start a band called Psycho Pirates?
Only if I can be Wheels.
Everybody wants something. Sorry,
we got to talk.
the Zitz Remedy.
We got to talk George Perez. We did his background when we did the Fantastic Four issue episode a while back. But he actually volunteered to do this series because they had the idea for it, but they didn't know who to get to the artist because it's going to be a really tough thing to do to draw this. And George Perez wanted to do it. He said, "Hey, let me do it." And he really loved get his hands on all these different characters from all these different eras. He said he loved drawing. It was the best time of his career drawing all this. It became
wait, real quick, Mike. I will say, I thought the panels themselves looked nice. Like I thought.
Yes,
I
that was.
I didn't think it looked bad. Like I was like, okay, it was a well-structured comic.
Here's the interesting point about his work here in this limited series. It was noted for its innovative panel designs and layouts.
Oh, there you go. I really thought it looked good. I liked it, but
the panel layouts here are really something. But here's the problem I had with it. George Perez, he did so much work on this issue, so much detail in every panel. The pages are so congested and so filled with info. And I guess just because of the story, how they have so much room to tell this massive story, they got to cram everything in there. But let me ask you this, Michael. If you had to guess, this story is 25 pages.
Yeah.
So let's take out the first page, the splash page. So we got 24 pages. How many panels do you think were on those 24 pages?
Do you know the actual number?
I do know the actual number.
Wow.
I'm going to take a guess, too, after Michael does.
I'm just going to guess, I don't know. I mean, total 22. How many pages? 22?
24 pages.
I'm going to guess there's 240.
Okay. Brandon?
No, it's more than that.
I wasn't going to go that high. I was going to go more around 200.
256.
Wow.
So that's well over 10 panels a page.
Wow.
That is a shit ton of panels.
Wow.
And every panel is so detailed. It's just so so congested, and it wasn't like, he's a great artist and all, but it just wasn't pleasant to read. It was so it just felt, claustrophobic reading this.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did not enjoy it at all.
For me,
really funny. Like I said, aesthetically, though, like I still admired it. I was like, wow, that's pretty cool.
He did no questioning the work ethic.
That's right.
No questioning the talent. No questioning the work ethic. It was a tremendous achievement, but I just did not enjoy it.
Huh.
See, you know what I think it is? Now, we talked about this before about how John Romita Sr. is one of the most perfect comic book artists. Like, the number of panels per page, the amount of action per page, right? Like the flow. If you're going to read a George Perez comic, it's kind of like you have to either go with it or not go with it. You know what I mean? It's almost like listening to a song. I don't know. There's a certain number of beats per minute for a song, but then you listen to jazz, and jazz is going to be 10 times faster. You either go with it or you don't. You know?
Yeah, like if you go back and look at Secret Wars, Mike Zeck, that's what I like. It was very clean, dynamic, action-centered art.
Yeah.
And this is highly detailed. Again, and this isn't his fault. They have this massive story to tell, so he has to cram all this into one issue. So you got to put a lot of panels.
Sure.
But it's just not my thing. I did not enjoy it whatsoever. I did not like it.
Let me put it to you this way. In my mind, again, about thinking about comic books, I don't think about panels. I suggested the word panels to you before you even said, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So in my mind, there must have been a shit ton of them because that stood out to me. So
yeah, he did a lot of cool stuff with it. Like he put little panels inside other panels, and like there were different designs on every page. So it was cool that way, but it was just too much stuff.
Yeah. No, I hear you.
Yeah.
Because the best comics, I guess, in my memory, always had a really nice balance of, like you said, those full page kind of like splash page, I guess you call it, versus like you would tell mini stories on each page, and this had so much on every page.
The best page of designs are the ones you don't notice, you know?
Yeah,
like they just flow. And again, it's not his fault. It's just too much he had to cram in here.
Right. Well, there was a lot.
Yes, there was.
17 different Earths and 84 characters. And,
Yes.
You know what's funny? I actually do think a lot of it was his choice, because I remember John Byrne saying he could tell the same story George Perez tells, but George will tell it in 8 panels and he'll tell it in 4. And then even Todd McFarlane.
But I don't know. I think this story's a little different, though, because you're dealing with all these characters.
I just mean that, like, if you, for example, remember the page where the Flash appears to Batman? Like, I don't know if you guys have the issue in front of you.
I don't.
I do, yeah.
Okay, so that page, like, they could have showed the Flash disappearing in 2 panels. He could have been there and then just vanished. But George Perez chose to draw it in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 panels. And he chose, he didn't have to show everyone's reaction, but he shows 6 panels of people's reactions. So
that's true.
A lot of it is his choice. And it's kind of like I said, you either go with it or you don't. Like, for me, the first time I read it, it just knocked my socks off. Like, I just love it.
Interesting. I get it. I do. I mean, I guess it's a preference thing, too. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, George Perez, great guy, but I didn't like this. But what can you do? So there you go. I'm glad I experienced it. I guess now I can say I read Crisis on Infinite Earths.
I might
you read number
read
3.
the whole thing now. I'm considering it.
I'm not reading any more of this nonsense. Here's what I don't like, Michael. I don't like the fact that they based it around guys named Monitor and Anti-Monitor. That is just And then we have this other guy in here. What's his name? I don't know.
Psycho Pirate.
Psycho Pirate, but we also have a guy named Pariah, who he gets pushed around and he has to watch all these universes die for some reason. Yeah. And he looks like a reject of a community theater production of Midsummer Night's Dream. I don't know.
I didn't like the talking monkey.
I'm always a big fan of a monkey.
I didn't like him.
If you put a monkey in a book and it's talking, I'm on with it.
Didn't like it.
But I just think, though, don't you think, Michael, this would have been better if they figured out a way to make, like, Darkseid the guy doing all this? Like,
no, I don't know. For me, I like the fact that they introduced a new character.
But Monitor and Anti.
Oh, I love the Monitor.
That's
I love
so
the Monitor.
Stupid.
But it's almost as cool as the Flash and the Reverse Flash.
Well, that's fine. But Monitor and Anti-Monitor, ugh.
I love it.
Dreadful. I don't know. And can you really get fired up about fighting shadows? I don't know.
No, I didn't like that either. I agree with you.
I like the Shadow Demons. They're okay.
It was like watching Harry Potter fighting the fucking, the Death Eaters or whatever.
And the time stuff was weird, too, because, correct me if I'm wrong, or well, maybe I am wrong. I don't know. So with that big tuning fork with the Nazis and the Germans in World War II, that was on Earth 2 or was that Earth 1?
That's what's confusing is it's on Earth 1 just in the past.
Okay, so then why did
Mike Dell?
they also?
That's what's confusing.
Yeah, yes, just that. That's all. But then why did they also need a tuning fork in the future on Earth 1 in New York City that the Teen Titans were trying to save those buildings from? Like
because it makes no sense, and you made it up as you went along. Okay.
Yeah. Because if the antimatter wave destroyed the Nazis and stuff in 1940s, it would have also destroyed the Teen Titans in the 1985. So why worry? I don't know.
Exactly, because it doesn't make any sense. Let me just give you one quick note. You remember how at the end of the issue, the Monitor is about to be killed by Harbinger?
He does.
Well, guess what? Number 4, it starts out they're buddies because Mark Wolfman was in such a rush and making it up as he went along, he forgot how the last issue ended.
Oh my God!
How is that kidding?
Right?
How is that possible to forget how the last?
Yeah, that's a joke.
I'm not kidding.
Why did it just open with like Ed McMahon presenting somebody a giant?
Like
seriously,
right now they're just hanging out, talking to each other.
Oh my God.
And then she ends up killing him later. She ends up killing him at, I think, the end of the issue. But
okay.
he forgot that
I should also mention.
Is he drunk? I mean,
I should also mention, not only did they screw up the Flower and Farmer Boy name, but in the first 2 issues, I read that they screwed up the name of the big monkey, too. They spelled it wrong in the first 2 issues. Get your shit together, DC. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, my God.
I think Marv was his own editor. I don't think there was an editor.
I can tell.
Yeah.
But anyway, so 1 out of 10, Brandon, what would you give it?
Geez, maybe. Wow. I mean, I feel like a dick giving it a 1, so I'll give it a 2. I hated it.
All right.
I did. I hated it.
All right. Michael, of course, you would. Well, I'll give it a 3 because I think I respect what they're trying to do.
But that's the thing. Based on our conversation, fine. I'll give it a 4 based on what we've talked about. Based on me reading it, a 1 or a 2.
Yeah, without the context, you're lost. There's no hope.
Exactly. I'm like, I don't know.
So I respect what they're trying to do. I just don't like the modern anti-mod. I would have preferred if they just had like a Thanos type villain who was controlling everything. And again, just the art was not my thing, man. I just not enjoy reading this at all. I have no interest in ever reading another Infinite Crisis thing in my life. So I'm done. But Michael, 1 out of 10.
I'm going to rate this the same way that I rated The Rise of Skywalker, okay? I acknowledge that it is a Frankensteinian mess of a movie or of a story, but I enjoyed it so much that I give it at least a 7.5.
You're busting out a 0.5. All right.
Yep.
Well, that was
because
I
was going to give it an 8, but it's not really an 8, so I'll go with 7.5.
At least that's like a more objective. Okay. No, it is. I thought for sure you'd be like 10. I'm like, yeah, that's an objective.
No, I'm not insane.
Well, before we get out of here, I got to mention that next issue is one of my picks, but we're going to have another guest.
Nice.
My buddy Miles Watson is going to come on. He's an author.
Okay.
But here's the bad news. Even though he's a good friend of mine, he has chosen a Batman comic book.
Nice.
So this sucks. Batman Special #1 from 1984.
Whoa! I think I know that one. Hold on.
And the artist, Michael, is one Michael Golden.
Oh! That was one of my picks, so now I don't have to wait to pick. That's great.
So that'll be next week on the Big Flea Market Fantasy. Well, Brandon, I can't thank you enough, buddy. I appreciate it, making the time for us.
Sure. I had nothing real to add except my drunkenness, but that's fine. I mean, sure.
We won't bother you again, but if you ever do want to come back on, we'll let you pick something you're really excited to talk about.
Oh, I would love to. Like, chances are it'll be some Spider-Man, but like.
Okay, that'll be perfect. Yeah,
I would love to.
All right.
Thanks for having me, fellas.
Nope. Yeah,
and
sure.
you know what? For me now, it's right back to Degrassi. So with a bye.
There he goes. There's cousin Brandon going back to watch Degrassi. And go to 19books.com and buy Brandon's book. Who Would You Be? Book of poetry. It's great. You'll love it.
All right, so that wraps up this week's episode of Flea Market Fantasy, reviewing a different Bronze Age comic every week. So until next Tuesday, this has been Mike L. and Mike Dell. We'll see you next time.